So now that we created our mains, we can go in and create a unidirectional flush or C-factor test. Today we're going to start with the unidirectional flush first. To do that, I go over to Test and Group Maintenance, click, and I'm going to go down to Unidirectional Flush, and then I'm going to go over to UDF Test Maintenance, and I'm going to add new. So I'm going to call this test UDF for IMS demo. And any test notes that I might want to add. Again, you'll notice we have a lot of grayed out buttons. As soon as I hit Save Data, those buttons get dark. So when we go in and do a flush, we're only going to do one main at a time, and you'll see this area in here is smaller. We're going to go in and select a main. In this case, we only have one main. If there were several, we'd select the one we want. We're going to add that main. Are we sure we want to? Yes. And that main popped up in this top box. Now I need to go down and identify the hydrants that I'm going to be using to flow. My primary flow hydrant is going to be H7, and we're using a 2-inch pedalless nozzle, and so I'm adding a primary flow hydrant. Now, when you're doing a unidirectional flush, sometimes it's necessary to get more flow than you can get out of one hydrant, so you may need to flow an additional hydrant. If that were the case, you go down to this additional flow hydrant, find a hydrant that you want to use from the list, and add it. I'm not going to use any additional flow hydrants for this demonstration. The next thing we have to do is select a residual hydrant. Now, when you're doing a unidirectional flush, you really don't need a residual hydrant. We give you this option because with Hurco's FireFlow Pro system, you can actually add a sensor, or if you're doing it manually, you can put a manual gauge on and monitor the pressure in the main. If you're flowing multiple hydrants and there's a good chance your pressure might drop below 20 psi, this is a good way to monitor that. So if you want to add a residual hydrant, you would simply go down here, click on the down arrow, select a hydrant, add it to the list. We're not going to add any residual hydrants to this test. And then finally, isolation valves. Now this is important. When you're doing a unidirectional flush or a C-factor test, you always need to be sure that you're in an isolated section, that water's not coming from other areas. We're doing a unidirectional flush, so we want the water to go in one direction, and the way we do that is by closing valves. So I'm going to go down in my valve list here, and I know there's 4 valves that intersect this main, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select 4 valves here. Alright, so now I've selected 4 valves. I've got a flow hydrant and 4 valves to close. I'm not going to be monitoring main pressure on this particular exercise, or flow activity, I should say. And so now I need to save this. So now I've created a test for my unidirectional flush. Let me X out of here. If we go back to Test and Group Maintenance, and go back to unidirectional flush and go down to UDF test group maintenance, again, like on a fire flow test or a valve exercise, I can start adding numerous tests to one group so that when I create a work order, I don't have to enter them individually. They all just go into the work order.